Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin. I got my start in show business when I was 17, although, truth be told, I was already working summers at NBC Studios in Brooklyn when I was 14 as an illegal minor. And today, that'd probably get you deported. Am I showing my politics? I worked on shows none of you probably remember. Anyone here recall Kraft Music Hall? Wow. Wow, I barely remember it, and I actually worked on it. When I was studying communications at Boston University, I used to commute back and forth to New York every weekend by bus just to work on Saturday Night Live. I ended up staying there for the first 5 years of that show, then 5 more years at NBC on Late Night with David Letterman. After that, I took a job writing at HBO, and then somehow I became a producer. Don't ask me how. From there, I moved to Nickelodeon as a production executive, which I later realized is just a fancy title for the guy who walks into the writer's room and gives notes. And then the writers sit there and make fun of him for the next 2 hours. My strategy was to go into the writer's room, give my notes, and then just never leave. And it actually worked. I took the job at Nick because I wanted to understand how networks make decisions and why they weren't buying what I was selling. I ended up becoming head of development, and my proudest achievement was developing SpongeBob SquarePants. Yeah, thank you. It was a show that nobody at the network wanted to make because they thought it was too weird. But somehow I got it greenlit. 26 years later, they're still making original episodes. After that, I ran production and development at Spike TV, and I eventually became president of Spike, where we launched The Ultimate Fighter, and we helped to bring the UFC to mainstream TV. That show, The Ultimate Fighter, ran for 14 seasons and eventually helped the UFC sell for $4.2 billion. They got $4.2 billion, I got promoted. Seems fair. Fast forward a few years and we rebranded Spike into Paramount Network, where I had the great fortune to find, develop, and greenlight Yellowstone. And eventually I stepped away from the corporate world to return to independent producing, and I love it. That is my passion. But I'm not here to talk about perseverance in show business, because don't tell anyone this, but as tough as it could be some days, and trust me, there are some of those days, I would have paid my employers to let me work in rooms of creative people. I was living my dream. But I'm here to talk about the other kind of perseverance, the kind that life doesn't ask if you're ready for. I married my high school sweetheart right after college. We had our daughter, Jillian, when I was 24, and our son, Bobby, at 27. We were young, too young. She was an OBGYN nurse working nights. I was working on Saturday Night Live, which is essentially a permanent night shift. She would tell all these unbelievable stories about saving lives, like the time she helped a doctor in a difficult C-section, where their gloved hands actually met inside the mother's abdomen, and they delivered a perfectly healthy baby. I thought it was gross, but it was amazing. I, on the other hand, had a story about Chevy Chase punching Bill Murray in the hallway outside Studio 8H. A lot less important. So we drifted apart. Our marriage ended, but we stayed united on one thing: our kids. They were everything. She remarried a couple of years later and kept climbing the ladder. I kept climbing the ladder in TV. One day I was in Orlando shooting the pilot for a sketch comedy show called All That, which was essentially Saturday Night Live for kids. Kenan Thompson was born on that show, Kel Mitchell, Lori Beth Denberg, Josh Server, Lisa Reyes, all still friends of mine 30 years later. After a long night in the writer's room and an even longer one at the bar, I went back to the hotel and just passed out. At 4 a.m., my phone rang. Somehow, and I still have no idea how that happened, I heard it. It was my mom. "Kevin," she said quietly, "Mary Lynn is gone." My ex-wife, the mother of my children. She was dead, just like that. The coroner said it was an aneurysm. She woke in the night, screamed out, never recovered, and the world just changed. I fell off the bed, sobbing, shaking, thinking, this can't be. Thinking, I can't possibly do this. I called my friend Ray, who was the head writer on another show down there in Orlando that I was working on, and probably one of the best human beings you'll ever meet. And without missing a beat, Ray said, "I'm getting you on the first flight in the morning, driving you to the airport right now." By the way, for all you Sopranos fans out there, Ray later played Little Carmine on The Sopranos. So imagine the future Little Carmine kindly and calmly chauffeuring a devastated friend to the airport. I arrived at a house I'd never actually been inside of to see my kids, who were 8 and 11 at the time, whose entire lives had just been ripped apart. I didn't know what I was walking into. I just knew I had to walk in. That spring, my daughter Jill and I were shopping at a department store. At checkout, the clerk smiled at her and said, "Are you buying something for your mom for Mother's Day?" I think I blacked out. That time in my life is a blur of brokenness, but also grace. I called my mom. Our relationship was complicated, and she said, "I'm not moving in with you, but I'll be there every step of the way." And she was. Grandma Joyce showed up for everything. I called the parents of my children's friends, people I barely knew, and asked for help. Every single one of them said yes. Old friends who had disappeared after the divorce, they showed up too. I didn't always want their help. I didn't always trust it, but I accepted it. My coworkers gave me the space to grieve and to heal and help to keep my career alive. And then 20 years ago, I met Janine, my wife, my hero. She became a mother and best friend to Jill and Bobby. We now have a 17-year-old son, Dylan, incredibly smart, hilarious, the light of our lives. Bobby, the kindest, smartest, musically talented vegan that you will ever meet. I kind of blew that joke there. And Jillian, she gave us Evelyn, our 7-year-old granddaughter who has basically declared herself queen of the universe. Frankly, we could not agree more. One night, early on in our relationship, Janine told me something that lives with me to this day. She said, "I fell in love with you because you did the hard thing. You didn't walk away. You showed up. You kept going." Perseverance isn't just about pushing through a bad day at work. It's when your world caves in. It's when you wake up one morning and by sundown, your life is unrecognizable. And yet you go on. You don't give up. You ask for help. You accept help, even when your pride tells you not to. You cry, you fall, you get up, you do it all again the next day. To all of you here today who've lost homes, memories, jobs, maybe even people you love, I see you. I've walked through a version of that fire. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Even when it feels impossible, when the road is scorched and the sky is smoke, you can rebuild. Not just homes, but hope, love, relationships, joy. So if you're in that place where everything feels broken, hold on. Just remember that you are way stronger than the moment you are in. Persevere, and you'll see that anything is possible. I am living proof of that. Thank you all.